Hey everyone, I'm Amanda and this is Mommy's Reading Chair. I kind of dropped the ball this month in terms of making videos. It was a little bit of a funky month for me, and by funky, I mean that I got into like this really weird funk. It did actually affect my reading a little bit. However, I did manage to finish my entire February TBR, so I'm pretty happy with myself. But I certainly got into just kind of a funk. I wasn't really feeling creative. I wasn't really feeling motivated. So it was a little bit of a bummer month. However, I did wind up having a couple of really, really good reads. Unfortunately, they were both at the end of the month, so my beginning of the month was like, it was just okay. So for February, I drew 3 cards. Fortunately, I didn't have that extra book, which I'm happy now because it wound up being a funky month. I don't know if I would have been able to manage a 6th book, but I did get through 5 books. The first card I picked was well, I don't know the exact order. I don't remember, but I picked the Cinderella card. I picked the Anna and Elsa card. And I also picked the Fairies from Sleeping Beauty. So each month I also have my book club pick and my 5-star prediction book, rounding off the month at 5 books. My first book for this month was Peace Like a River by Leif Enger. This was my book club pick and it was just okay. I really wound up loving the characters, and if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that I'm really big on character-driven stories, so I did really love that. My biggest complaint about this book was sometimes the language seemed very pretentious, like kind of forced in a way. So it sometimes when I was reading I didn't feel like it flowed very well. I don't know if that was intentional by the author. It didn't feel like it was intentional. It felt very forced. However, it didn't happen throughout the entire book. It only happened in spurts. So it didn't completely ruin the book for me. This book I had a hard time getting into because it is a slow build. It's not like this big page turner. One of my book club members, actually the lady who recommended the book, described it perfectly as it being a family saga. So I really wound up absolutely loving the characters. So that was its big redeeming quality for me. I do recommend the book because I think that the characters are just so good. And like I've said already a couple of times, like you do wind up really loving them at the end. But don't expect a page-turning experience. It wasn't one of those that I just couldn't put down. I easily could put it down and walk away for a little while and come back. So that is Peace Like a River by Leif Enger, and I give it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was for the Cinderella card, which means that I needed to read a book with a character of royalty, and I chose The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. This book, originally a couple of people had commented on my last video, the TBR video for this month, that this one wouldn't count as a character of royalty. So I am going to count it as there were royal characters in the book. They were just minor characters. There were like dukes and there was the King of France. So I'm going to go ahead and count it. And this book was another one that to me was just okay. I really loved the story. And Felicity, the sister, I absolutely adored her character. My biggest complaint, and I do know that this was intentional by the author, my biggest complaint is that it is kind of a modern historical fiction. The way the characters spoke and the way the characters did certain things is not accurate to what they would be like in that time period. For some reason, that super duper bothered me this month. I don't know why. it made it feel like such a childish book to me. But once I got past that, once I got over that hump, it really was a very good story. So I did wind up really loving it in the end, but it took me so long to stop getting mad at that. It was intentional by the author, though. It is a young adult novel. I loved that the main character was struggling with his sexuality. I thought that was a really interesting, not twist, but a really interesting character development for him because of the time period he lived in. I mean, anyways, that aside, I wound up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars, and I do plan on reading the rest of the series. I believe the second book actually focuses on Felicity, who was my favorite character, so I'm really pretty excited about that. I don't know when I'll get around to it. It's not high on my priority list. If the historical inaccuracies will bother you, stay away from it. But if you're looking for a really good story, I thought the story was excellent, and I did like the characters, so 3 out of 5. So as you can see, I've had 2 3 stars that were like, meh, just okay books. And I had another one. I read Legendary, which is the second book in the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. I don't know what was wrong with me with this book. I don't know if it was just because I was already in a slump and I was kind of feeling funky still. This book disappointed me. I loved the first book. Caraval was incredible. Legendary is the second in the series, and I didn't like it as much. I did like the story. I love the whole concept of Caraval and the game they play. I just think that that's such a cool idea. So that scenes where she was trying to figure out different pieces to this puzzle and different clues, but it fell flat for me. I really felt like, especially in the beginning, it was so repetitive, I stopped paying attention to it. So I wound up giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I did really love the setting, and I loved the way I did like the ending. I did like the ending. So I do think I will finish the series. There's only 3, so I only have 1 more left. So I do think I will finish it, but again, not a high priority book for me. So as you can see, kind of a slumpy month. I was feeling a little down. So I decided to grab my 5-star prediction book because, as we know, I predicted that I would give this 5 stars. And it worked. It got me out of my slump, and I absolutely adore this book. And that is Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. Like, I can't even describe how much I loved this book. It was so wonderful. At first, I felt like, and it was probably me because I was already like in a funk, I felt like it was going to be really hard for me to follow because of the way it was written. But once I got used to that style, which didn't take me long, but once I got used to the style, I fell in love with this book. Like, 100% lives up to the hype, and I don't always love books that are really hyped up or overhyped, but man, this book was incredible. That ending is not at all what I predicted. I also absolutely love the style it's written in. It is a piece of art. It is so wonderful, and I cannot recommend it any more highly. I do definitely plan on reading the rest of the series, and that is a little bit more of a priority. Gemina is the next book, so if I pull a sci-fi card, you know that I will definitely be choosing that book as my next. This book follows 2 characters who are on different like ships because their planet was just destroyed, and there's like, I mean, what more could you want? There's romance, there's conspiracy theories, there's a crazy AI who literally like loses it, and I loved it so much. I loved it so much. Please read it. Stop what you're doing and read it right now. After that, I was like a little worried because I had just left a 3-book kind of slump, And then I read a 5-star book. And every time I read a 5-star book, I feel bad for the book that follows it because it like usually doesn't live up to what I just read. However, my last book for the month, it was another 5-star book. I cannot express to you the amount of emotion I felt when I was reading this book, and that is Winter Garden by Kristen Hanna. This is the 4th book I've read by Kristen Hanna, and all 4 of them I have not been disappointed. This book, I will say, was a little repetitive in the beginning, so I didn't have high hopes, but once I got past that, it was absolutely insane. I am not a crier when it comes to books. I don't typically cry. I feel the emotion, but it's very inward for me. This book actually made me cry. Ever since becoming a mom, I do struggle with reading books that deal with children going through some things, or children experiencing lots of pain. That doesn't spoil the story for you, but it does kind of reveal that they go through something incredibly difficult. This also deals with 2 sisters kind of figuring out their relationship and what they mean to each other, and then learning even more about their mother. And the character dynamics are so beautifully written, and I really feel like that is something Kristen Hanna is an expert at. She's so good at developing characters and their relationships with one another. So I'm a fan. I can't wait to read another Kristen Hanna book. Every book so far I've read by her has been 5 stars. And 4 books, I mean, I was really thinking like I'm going to find the book this month that I don't like as much. But no, I cannot recommend this highly enough. There trigger warnings. There's a lot of death in this book. There's a lot of grieving in this book. So if you are dealing with something like that, maybe hold off on it. But whew, Lord help me, that book. I read it. I finished it last night. And I literally sat there like holding my head for probably a good 10, 15 minutes, just like, oh my gosh. Wonderful story. Definitely very emotional. So, be ready. So there you have it. I thought I was going to have a funk month, and it really started out that way, which was really disappointing. But I wound up rounding off the month with 2 5-star books back to back. I cannot tell you the last time that happened to me, so I'm feeling pretty good. And I'm feeling really, really eager to get to March. So I'm glad that the month ended with 2 really, really strong reads, because it's just getting me even more excited to start the month of March. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell for notifications so you can see what I am planning to read in March. My Disney Chooses My TBR video should be up and ready to watch in a couple of days, and I cannot wait. So that's all for now. I'll see you next time.